right. Thanks for joining us on the bright side. Once again, we're going to continue talking about connective tissue. We take a little bit of a different take on it here. I want to just finish up with the skin, first of all. One of the biggest problems we have with skincare is we don't distinguish the surface tissue from the connective tissue. The surface of the skin is only about as thick as a piece of notebook paper. The bulk of the skin underneath, the connective tissue area, is about 10 times as big or 9 times as big as the very tippy top surface. But when we treat our skin, when we want to get rid of our wrinkles or take care of our zits or cysts or whatever skin condition we may have, typically we only address the surface. We don't address the bottom, the connective tissue. But there are things that we can do to the surface that will indeed address the connective tissue and actually beef it up, make it more robust and thick. This is how alpha hydroxy acids work. Alpha hydroxy acids exert their well-known, well-researched, in the literature anyway, there's tons of stuff about alpha hydroxy acids for the skin. We've known about the importance for alpha hydroxy acids for the skin since the 1930s, 1940s, even in 1950s and 1960s. A lot of papers came out on how important alpha hydroxy acids were for beefing up connective tissue, putting it on the surface, but really getting connective tissue effects. By disrupting the surface, by disrupting skin cells on the surface, we can initiate connective tissue changes. This is so important, and in my opinion, everyone past the age of 30 or maybe 35 should be using an alpha hydroxy acid exfoliator once or twice a week. Glycolic acid is great. Lactic acid can work. You can use grape juice. You can use lemon juice. You can use milk, which has lactic acid in it. You can use wine. Get your Vitamix out, or get a Vitamix. Blend up an entire lemon. Just throw a lemon in with some water, including the seeds and the peels, the whole thing. The seeds and the peels are extremely good for your skin, very medicinal. And then the alpha hydroxy acids in the lemon can help stimulate connective tissue growth, stimulate collagen and all the juicy sugars that are located in the connective tissue, the polysaccharides. You could throw in a little honey. Honey's a good source of enzymes and B vitamins and lactic acid if you want to go all out. You can throw in some turmeric too. Throw in some aloe vera. Throw in a bit of meat tenderizer. Some what do they call that stuff? That papaya meat tenderizer. Accent meat tenderizer. We used to use that on jellyfish stings when I was a kid. But that same kind of meat tenderizer will help exfoliate and soften the stratum corneum. You do it once or twice a month. You get a nice exfoliating effect and a nice collagen stimulating effect. When we think about aging, the saggy, loose look of elderly skin, what we're looking at, folks, is connective tissue breakdown and not enough build up. And by the way, this connective tissue breakdown that's occurring in the skin is also occurring in your blood vessels, because your blood vessels are made up of connective tissue. It's also occurring in your bone, because your bone is connective tissue. Connective tissue breaks down as a unit. So if you're getting wrinkles, your blood vessels are getting wrinkles too. And your bone is getting wrinkles too. And the fascia, the connective tissue that's wrapped around all of your organs, is getting wrinkles too. So you want to treat your wrinkles and your fine lines as your crow's feet, as not an enemy, but as your best friend, because it's pointing you to a connective tissue breakdown that could be shortening your life. And by the way, it's not just build up and break down when it comes to connective tissue defects. There's also diseases that can result in a connective tissue breakdown. It's not just aging. It's not just a deficiency in build up. It could be some kind of autoimmune disease. Connective tissue diseases often involve some kind of autoimmunity. Connective tissue is protein. And when the immune system becomes sensitized to a food protein, when it becomes sensitized to soy protein or to milk protein or to egg protein or whatever kind of protein it's become sensitized to, you run higher risks for an autoimmune disease of the connective tissue. Connective tissue protein looks like soy protein. It looks like bean protein. Connective tissue to the immune system, connective tissue protein is very similar to food protein. So when the immune system becomes sensitized to a specific food protein, it can also become sensitized to connective tissue proteins as well. Autoimmune diseases of the connective tissue, and all autoimmune disease really, need to be first and foremost addressed as food issues and as digestive issues. Simply fasting for a day or two is enough for you to notice improvement in connective tissue autoimmune disease or any connective tissue symptoms, pain, inflammation, and such. So blood vessels too. That's also connective tissue. If you want to focus on one body system for anti-aging the circulatory system, or anti-aging the connective tissue, I should say, it's the circulatory system. Focus on circulation. Focus on blood. Focus on lymph, too. Lymph is super important. We don't talk about lymph anywhere near enough. I'll tell you what I mean when we come back from our break. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side on the Genesis Communication. Connective tissue, we've been talking about how it's connective tissue as it regards the structure of the body, but the blood is also, the blood vessels and the blood itself is also a kind of connective tissue. Blood is considered liquid connective tissue. And then the vessels that channel the blood, that's also made up largely of connective tissue, and so is the lymph. And we don't talk anywhere near enough about the lymphatic system, lymphatic congestion, and circulatory congestion in general. And by the way, the lymph and the lymph and the blood are essentially the same system. They kind of merge. They're separated out from most of the body, but they merge in different parts of the body, and they kind of pool into each other. So it's all basically the same system. The lymphatic system and circulatory congestion in general will exacerbate any health challenge, and this is one of the major links to degenerative disease and early demise. Lymphatic congestion. That is stuff getting into the lymph and not getting pulled out. And this is one of the causes of hypertension, by the way, of high blood pressure. If you're on an antihypertensive, a beta blocker drug or a diuretic because your blood pressure is too high, it's, in a way, it's kind of ironic because your blood pressure builds up when the lymphatic system is congested, and then you take, and the circulatory system is congested. This will cause pressure to build up, and then you take a blood pressure drug that slows down your heart and slows down the pressure even more. That's how these antihypertensive drugs work. They shut down the heart. Now, leaving aside the utter stupidity of a medical professional dispensing a drug that suppresses the heart, leaving that aside for a minute, if you have hypertension because your circulatory system is congested, and now you stop the pressure at the heart level which is pushing the blood through, that's going to cause more leakage, that's going to cause more congestion, and that's going to cause even more problems, and now you've only exacerbated things. If you're on an antihypertensive because your pressure is building up, because blood can't move through the crap that's piling up, and the lymph can't move because of crap that's piling up via leaky gut syndrome or digestive issues or food intolerances, now you've only exacerbated things. This is so important, this link between the lymphatic system and hypertension. And considering how toxic most of us are, and how clogged up our lymph is, it makes perfect sense that 80 million Americans or more are going to have high blood pressure. Doctors have a great term for high blood pressure when they can't figure out the cause. They call it essential hypertension. And the vast majority of hypertension is said to be essential hypertension. So what does that word essential mean? It means doctors don't know what's causing it. Essential means we don't know why you have high blood pressure. Essential as in it's just basic. It's just part of the wiring. It's not basic. It's not part of the wiring or the plumbing. Essential hypertension means the blood is not moving correctly, and it happens for two reasons, and two reasons only. Actually, it happens for one reason. A body in distress. That's the only reason. We got to cut through the chase of this nonsense of our 12,800 different medical diagnoses and different diseases. No matter what you name your disease, it's a sign of the body in distress. The body is your baby, and your baby is crying. That's what it is. That's all degenerative disease is our baby is crying. And yes, we can take duct tape and wrap it around our baby's mouth, and that's what your antihypertensive does. It takes duct tape and wraps it around your baby's hypertensive mouth, your body's hypertensive mouth. But that's not, you may not have to listen to the baby crying. That's not going to help you. Hypertension and all degenerative disease is the manifestation of a body in distress, secondary to stuff getting into the body, into the blood that shouldn't be there. When fluids don't move around, because things are pooling up, doctors will call that fluid retention. And it's the first thing physicians treat when it comes to high blood pressure. They'll put you on a low-salt diet. It's more medical stupidity. Low-salt diet, please. And even worse, they'll dispense a diuretic which will force your body, compel your body to lose fluid as well as B vitamins and as well as the electrolytes and all the water-soluble nutrients. One of the worst things, if not the worst thing you can do to a body that's already in distress is give it more toxins that it has to process, and that's exactly what the medical model does via prescription medicine. That's what prescription medicine is all about. This is the dirty little secret of the drug business. The body has to process the drugs through the poison control system. And this is not part of the side effect profile of drugs. You know, you read about the side effect profile of drugs. That's bad enough. Every drug's got side effects. That's bad enough. But the little sneaky little secret that the drug companies don't talk about and that your doctor doesn't even know probably is that the body has to process the drugs through its poison control system. And this is a burden on the body that results in more toxicity in addition to side effects. The load on the liver, the load on the detox enzymes can exacerbate lymphatic congestion. And if we're unhealthy enough to be medicated in the first place, the lymph is usually going to be clogged anyway. Now you've got an added burden, which you may not even notice, even though eventually it's going to take its toll. The worst thing, I'm telling you guys, the worst thing you can ever do, and the sign of an ignorant medical professional, by the way, is to take an antihypertensive or to have a doctor dispense a hypertensive drug for high blood pressure. It is so stupid, it's beyond belief. You're shutting down your heart, number one. That's stupid enough. But then you're only going to clog things up more. You got more. The pumping action, the heart, which represents the pumping action, is now suppressed. That means less drainage of toxins. The body's a pressure system. If you stop the pressure at the heart level, that means less drainage of toxins. And because cells depend on pressure to be fed, cells are fed through the action of pushing, through the action of pressure from the liquid system, the blood and the lymph. That means less nutrition to the cells, and it means less oxygen as well. Less drainage of toxins, less pressure for feeding a cell, and less oxygenation. That's what you get with an antihypertensive drug. Now, who thinks that's intelligent, doctors? Who thinks that makes any sense? The body is a pressure system. Its chemistry and its metabolism depends on pressure. Antihypertensives stop pressure at the heart level. Dumb, dumb, dumb. And that means cells aren't going to be fed, cells aren't going to be breathed, cells aren't going to be detoxified as effectively as they should. That means cells will become defective. That means cells will die. That will ultimately lead to a defensive response. Defensive response means immunity. It means inflammation. As the body attempts to clean up the mess and protect itself from the mess, of course, that means even more toxicity. And that's where you get your downward vicious spiral of degeneration and early demise. And your doctors are complicit. Now, you can use magnesium 2,000 milligrams a day for high blood pressure. Absolutely. You can use niacin, time release. You can use CoQ10, the Healthy Start Pack, the Mighty 90. They're all important. But as long as you got this toxicity going on, this lymphatic congestion, this blood pressure, circulatory system congestion, you're going to be dealing with high blood pressure. All right, I'm Pharmacist Ben. Continue this discussion on lymphatic congestion. We haven't talked about this anywhere near enough considering how important it is, and circulatory system congestion as it regards connective tissue tomorrow as we continue talking about peptides and proteins, the importance of protein for building things, for building the body up. Protein deficiency is such an important factor when it comes to breakdown. And it should come as no surprise, by the way, that we're protein deficient. Protein's expensive. Protein breaks down easily. It doesn't preserve well. It doesn't lend itself to the mercenary economic food model. There's a reason why our economic food model is based in grains. Processed grains is that because processed grains can be stored and shipped and sit on shelves. It has a shelf life. Protein doesn't really have a shelf life. Good protein, anyway, doesn't really have a long shelf life, relatively speaking. Now, processed protein does. That's the problem with processed protein. You know, even whey is a processed protein. This is why you want to be so careful of your whey protein. This is why I talk about One World Whey so much, because it's such a nice protein. It's not easy to find a really high-quality whey protein. Don't go to Costco. Don't go to the supermarket to buy your whey protein. Be very careful about your whey protein. It's a little more expensive to get a quality protein, but you don't want to be skimping on protein. You don't want to be skimping on probiotics either. There's certain nutrients that you don't want to skimp on, probiotics and protein especially. Protein's so darn important. I would say protein deficiencies are one of the major reasons for our degenerative disease crisis that we're dealing with in this country. It's no accident that as we started to get more of our calories from grains 10,000 years ago, that's when really degenerative diseases started to kick in. Especially the last couple hundred years, when we really started to process and learn how to manipulate grains and sugars and high carbohydrate foods. Anyway, that's for another day. We'll continue talking about connective tissue tomorrow. Time to hit our phones.